Welcome to the Gentle Art Podcast, everyone. Today we have Anthony Quiles, and
Yes, sir.
he goes by Q. That's what I know him as.
Yes.
And then Q is a musician, artist. He has several projects out. One is Qnique, right? The other is Stillwell, and
Yep.
then also you were the stand-in drummer for Korn as well, correct?
No. I was a keyboard player.
Oh, keyboard. That's correct.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Were you on the last tour with Korn?
No, there's a story to be told there, and I'm gonna leave that for Fieldy when he's ready to talk to the public.
Got it.
But
So,
I was able to do the last gig I did with them as far as being together all together was during COVID. We did a live stream performance from the Stranger Things set in Hollywood.
oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so I wanted to break the ice by asking you, like, as a totally separate idea, like, what are the top 3 albums that you love, like, in your life, and why?
Ooh, that's an amazing question. I already thought of 2 off the bat. Number one is,
Your
you know
number
what?
one
Number
favorite
one,
in this order? Is it 1 to
yes.
3, or yeah, this order?
This
This is your top.
number one is kind of a combo pack because I was listening to George Martin, the producer of the Beatles,
Yeah.
talk, and when he said what he said, I totally agreed. And he said, if you took songs from Magical Mystery Tour and you took songs from Sergeant Pepper, you could take certain songs, combine them, and then you'll have the greatest album ever written. And I agreed with him because those are 2 of my favorite albums. But there are certain cuts on the album that I kind of skip over. But overall, those are the 2 for Beatles. Like those are the 2 that hypnotize me to this day. That I still listen to Beatles albums. Those are the 2 as a one. Those 2 as a one combo.
I got it. So when you say hypnotized, what does that mean for me? Like, tell me about that. Like,
It's still a spiritual experience for me after all of these years. You know, as a kid, my parents would play it all the time, and I would just listen to it as a kid just for the musicality of it. And as you get older and you start digging into the instrumentation, and then you start watching, like I've watched several videos of Paul McCartney dissecting albums, and so you start learning more about what the process was, and then you get into the lyrics and how they put that together, and it
just so genius, right? It's just like
it's
stand
just
the test of time.
stand the test of time. And the other thing what people don't understand is, see, today we have so much access as far as recording. You could record so much because you have a computer. Back then when the Beatles did it, they were so limited, and in their limits they pulled off what arguably is some of the best music ever written in our life. So it's great.
I love the Beatles. I'm so happy that that's your number 1. Okay, number 2
is Boogie Down Productions' Criminal Minded.
Kick Ass. Walter shaking his head up and down, like Walter, the producer.
To be alive. I have a funny story to tell. So when I was a kid, I was slightly too young to get into like the Union Square or Latin Quarter or all of these clubs. So I would stand out in front. And there was this one instance where when KRS-One had dropped the second album, which was By All Means Necessary, he won't believe this. My mother forged a birth certificate for me, so I could go and see Boogie Down because I had become a mega fan at that point. And
how old are you now? When you say kid, what are we talking?
I was, man, I don't know. I probably 17 years old at that time.
I get it. Okay.
So and it was a club in Brooklyn, out of all places. He put
L'Amour's.
No, he performed in Bay Ridge, which was at that time, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, it's like I think it was a Wise Guy Club, and they flipped it into, you know, they would have a rap night, so they called it the Rap Shack for
Uh-huh.
that night.
Uh-huh.
And I happened to get in with this fake ID, and I knew I was the youngest kid in there. I look like the Karate Kid in a hip hop club. I stood out really, like I really stood out. And I have a lot of stories like that, but this in particular, I made my way to the front of the stage, and I watched the entire performance without budging.
Yeah.
And then he signed something, and I grabbed it, and I still have it like
Oh.
plastic. And
Oh,
after that,
amazing.
after my career, you know, did what it did, I was able to do shows with him. But that was more impressionable, to be a fan,
Yeah.
see your hero there, and
Oh my gosh, so good.
pass
So
out.
good. Did you tell him
Yeah.
about the experience real quick? When you were working
Yes.
with him, did you
So
tell?
at that time, during that time, that we call that the crack era, and the
Uh-huh.
crack era is split between the chaos, but the beauty. At that time, hip hop was just at its, to me, in my opinion, was at its best spot
Yeah.
from I think from '86 all the way to like maybe '93.
A lot of people
That's
would agree with you, I
yeah,
think.
that's
Yeah.
some of the best hip hop ever made.
Right.
And um I would I had bounced around to different schools because my parents had divorced, and I ended up going to Lafayette for about, I don't know, maybe a year,
Uh-huh. For those of
something
you who
like that.
don't know, Lafayette's a high school in Brooklyn.
Yes. And and you know, at that time during the crack era, there was a lot of kids in certain classes that they were dealing in the streets, and so kids would show up with Gucci sneakers,
Yeah.
big rope chains,
Yeah, yeah,
Gucci
yeah,
links.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, and I'm like mesmerized all of this. Like I was like, this is incredible. And I remember there was this one kid that I went. He was in one of my classes, and I knew his real name. His real name was Sherman, but he
Sherman.
had a right, but he had a street name. I forgot. It was like Chip or something like that. Chipper.
Chipper.
And so the street guys would call him that. And
Uh-huh.
I knew him as Sherman because we were in class together.
Right.
So I happened to get into a club. I went to go see Stetson Sonic and Big Daddy Kane.
Oh my gosh.
And I walk in, and maybe a few feet in, there's Sherman with like a group of, like, you know, street dudes. And
Yeah,
here
drug
I am. Like I
dealers.
said, I looked like the Karate Kid back then.
Uh-huh.
Like I
Uh-huh.
stood out. Like
Right.
I looked like I worked at the place. I didn't look like I was there to listen to it. So I'm walking, and you know, I'm there as a music fan. I'm not
Right.
really
Right.
glued to
Showing
the
out.
street
Right.
life.
Right.
Right. So I'm like walking in, and I see Sherman, and I walk over to him. I go, "Hey, what's up, Sherman?" And he's looking at me with like disbelief
And contempt.
and like, and I could see the look on his face. He's looking at me like, "What are you doing here, man? Like, go home." And I was all by myself. I would roll to these
Right.
these things by myself.
Probably the best idea, by the way.
Yeah,
Rolling into
yeah,
a crew
exactly.
with a crew is not always the best idea these
No,
days.
I believe me. I've been to several, like,
Yeah.
Bronx. I went to school in the Bronx for a limited time, and they used to have. There was the school I went to was Lehman High School at that
Yeah.
time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they used to have these Friday night school jams, and
Yeah.
Rocksteady would
Yeah.
show up,
Yeah.
and the Cosmic Break, and they would battle, but it would always end in pandemonium, like
Always.
fist fights, and
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
always,
Yeah, man.
always. So you're right. It was like smarter for me to always,
So,
even though at times you know, people would try to check me, and I was just a kid, so I wouldn't feed into it. I would just like stare, like try to give them the look, like, look, get a look at me, man. Do I look like I'm here for violence and fighting? Like,
so do you tell KRS-One when you're working with KRS-One that about your experience? Does he? Are you on, like, when you're working with him? You go, you know, I saw you when I was 17. Do you have that conversation with him, or you?
no, the only dude that I've had that conversation with is Rakim, because
Oh,
Rakim, to me, he's number one.
right.
He's the alien of the bunch. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
after reading his biography, it just solidified what I've always believed. He just, you know, when he hit in 90, 80, 85, 86, he, I was too young to really understand until later. But when you revisit what he was, and the beauty of revisiting his work is getting into the arguments with the youth, not arguments like yelling, but friendly debates where they'll say, if you bring up a rock hymn, they'll be like, "Oh, that's the old man argument," and
Right.
it's like, the thing is, the problem with your argument is, and people don't realize this. When you listen to Eric B. for President, when you listen to, I Got Soul, he wrote those songs when he was 17
Yeah,
years
man.
old.
Beautiful.
Got to like really think about this. It's
Right.
like, wait a minute, those
Genius
lyrics came out of
talent. Right.
17-year-old kid,
Right.
and the
Right.
flow and the cadence, and
Right.
so when I finally I opened up for Rakim in New Jersey, and I danced in one of his videos, and then recently he came out to California, and a friend of mine called his manager because I have this denim jacket where I got this old T-shirt that I bought in Times Square like in 1988 of Eric B. and
You
Rakim
sewed it on the
probably.
back of the jacket?
I put it on the back of the
Yeah, man.
jacket.
That's what we used
And
to
I
do in
had to
those
show
days.
him I
Yeah.
had to show him it, and he was blown away because he
Nice.
hadn't seen the shirt in so long.
Right.
And just to be able to tell him, like, "Yo, I opened up for you, and I read your book," all of those things to a dude like that, and he was so humble.
So meaningful.
And then when you think about it, it's like it's got to be trippy for him
Yep.
that
Yep.
most people that come across him call him the greatest of all time. It's got to be weird. That's got to be such a weird burden
Yep.
to
Yep.
live with
Yep.
your
Yep.
whole
Yep.
life.
It weighs heavy. Let
Yeah.
me ask you, now that we're talking, do you know number 3?
Okay, so number 3, that's probably going to be a little tougher for me because it definitely has to. You know what? Wait a minute. Number 3, I know what it is now. It's Soundgarden, Super Unknown.
Oh my gosh.
It is.
Wow.
And Dave Grohl had said when he was being interviewed and they brought up Soundgarden, he said Super Unknown is Soundgarden's Sergeant Pepper.
Yep.
And he was right. He's
Yep.
absolutely
Yep.
right. That's their best work.
Real quick, you think Soundgarden is the best band of that genre, that generation?
I think Alice in Chains
Yeah,
is
man.
the best, the better
I
band
know, man.
production-wise.
I know, buddy. Like I think about it too. I love that album and I love Soundgarden, but for me, like Alice in Chains just
Alice in
crushes
Chains.
it.
Yeah,
Like,
I sometimes I get a little annoyed on how the spotlight goes to other bands,
yeah, like
and I know
Nirvana and
Alice in
stuff like
Chains
that.
was successful. I know they were successful, and that's another story I have because I was blessed with the opportunity to be on the road with Korn when they shared the bill with Alice in Chains. So
Oh
to
my
be in the
gosh.
same room, with Jerry Cantrell, I'll tell a quick story.
One of my
So
favorite albums is his solo album. It's really good.
yes,
Really good.
so we're in the catering area in Long Island, and it's Korn, Alice in Chains, and maybe one or two other bands. And we're probably a couple of weeks in, so Jerry, he's been cool with everybody, and to me, I'm baffled by it because I don't like to use the word grunge because I feel like it just it's too broad of a stroke to describe the
Right.
music.
Right.
But
It's
if I have
a
to, if I
genre,
have to
right?
simplify, it for people, it's like out of all grunge people, he's a superhero to me because his guitar
Jerry
playing is
Cantrell
just
is crazy.
yeah,
So
it's just
beautiful.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
we're in the catering area, and it's me, Fieldy, Ray Luzier, who plays drums for Korn now, and we're just sitting there, and Jerry walks in with an acoustic guitar around his neck, and he's just playing. He's walking and playing. This was like his
Is he
normal thing.
warming up for the show, or is
Yeah,
he
he just
just
did it every day. It was
yeah,
like weird. It was
yeah,
beautiful and just odd to see a man that's been playing so long still
yep,
pick up the guitar and
yep,
play.
yep.
So we're sitting there and we're already used to it. He's walking around, he's playing. And for some reason, he's playing and he walks right up to me. And in my head, I'm like, this makes no sense. And he looks at me and he goes, "Do you have a favorite song?" And now I'm trembling because I'm like, oh God, man. So I pick an Alice in Chains song from a more recent album, The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. It's a song called Voices. And his eyes lit up because I picked something so like
Right,
rare. I didn't pick
rare,
the obvious.
right.
And so he starts playing it like right in front of me, right? He's playing it and everybody's now around me. Like now a crowd gathers and I'm staring at this man play it. So in my head, I'm like, Q, if you don't sing,
Oh,
you're gonna
wow.
hate yourself. So I'm like nervous because it's like I don't believe I'm even in the same ballpark as him or anyone from Alice in Chains. So I'm like really
But you're
scared
in
to
the
even.
same room. You're
Right,
certainly
right,
there, buddy.
right. So I at first I'm telling myself, all right, come on, man, just sing a bar, just do something. So I start whisper singing because I'm scared. I'm like, and then
I didn't know
it turns
whisper
into.
singing was a thing, but yeah, I think I've done it a few
I was
times.
scared. I was so scared. And then and then it just turned into he and I singing with each other. And in the back of my
Wow.
mind, I'm like, this makes absolutely no
Right,
sense.
right.
And I was fortunate
It's a
that
surreal
Ray,
moment, right?
yeah, it was
Yeah.
weird. It was weird. And then Ray from Korn, he's filming it. So I have no idea he's filming it. So it's
Oh,
me and Jerry singing. I'm singing light. I'm respecting that
right,
it's his song. It's
right,
his.
right.
And as soon as we finish, he looks at me, he goes, "Man, you have a really nice voice." And then he
Oh,
just walks off.
beautiful.
And I'm like, wow,
Beautiful, beautiful,
holy
beautiful.
crap.
What a
Yeah,
story.
it was nuts. It was
Oh,
nuts.
beautiful. So my next question is Sergeant Pepper's um and these other two albums, like how much do they influence your path in life? Can you track that? Do you understand, or like was it even a
Yes.
thing? Like do you go like, oh, that's what I want to do? Or like how does that go musically? I mean, let me give the listeners some background, right? So you, by the way, if you don't know who Fieldy is the bass player to Korn, right?
Yes.
And so you dance for Rocksteady, which is in my opinion the pinnacle of break dancing as one
Yeah.
of the three pillars that push. Some people say karate or martial arts is another pillar. They think it's four. Actually, I think you and I talked about it. But like there's three major, and if you consider martial arts a minor, like pillars that push hip hop into mainstream culture. So
Yeah.
you're a part of the music and you're a part of the dance scene that's pushing hip hop into what people know now. Like everybody
Yes.
knows it and all of it. So you have that and you're so is Sergeant like are you going like I want to be a musician? Are you going like as a 17-year-old? What's is that informing you into
It starts way before that.
uh-huh.
When I was born Kings County Hospital, and my parents we moved to Avenue U,
Yep.
a block
Where the
away from the
dojo
school.
is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, West 8th. We lived on West 8th and Avenue. My grandfather lived around the corner on West 8th Street. So I've been I was born and raised in that neighborhood.
Our paths
And
were bound to cross, man.
yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. Go.
So it starts with my mom was a singer songwriter, and more folky. It was the time for her. It
Yeah,
was the
right.
60s.
Right, right, right.
So
So
she would go to coffee houses and churches, and she
uh-huh.
would perform with my uncle.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
my
So
my
music's in your
initial
blood, you think?
it's immediate. It's
Yeah.
like I'm
Uh-huh.
born, and my mom is a singer songwriter, and my dad is a trumpet player,
Oh,
and I'm in the middle of all it. Now it's me and my brother. Now my brother didn't really take to it.
right.
He enjoyed it, but
Right.
he surprisingly he was more of the martial artist later on
Right.
in life.
Right.
He became that, and so the way it was almost like my parents didn't know what they were doing as far as being parents, but they knew. But they
I'm
that was the
laughing,
era.
buddy,
To me,
because I
that's
don't
the era. That's the era
buddy,
of
nobody knew what they were doing back
nobody
then
knew
as a
what the hell
parent.
was going on. So so but what was interesting was the one thing that I have to give to my father was that he didn't understand what he was doing, but he, for some reason, focused this energy into telling me how to analyze musicians. And it doesn't
Mm,
make any sense because he can't play anything else but the trumpet, and now he doesn't play at all.
mm-hmm.
So it was just very strange that God or the universe or whatever
Right.
you want to believe in
Right.
chose him as the antenna to
Right.
transmit this message. And then what he would do is he would have these, these parties where he invite all his friends, they'd smoke weed, joke around, and then he would turn to me with this microphone he bought from Radio Shack, Realistic. I remember the brand,
Yeah, I remember
Realistic.
Realistic too. I had Realistic speakers, pal.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so he would give me this microphone. I'm like 4 or 5 years old, and he go, Anthony, sing for the party. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I would just sing, whether he was
Beautiful.
playing Beatles, Rolling Stones, James Brown, and I'd be dancing. And I wasn't even shy about it. I would just jump right into it. I was
Right.
a little tiny kid, and it just stood with me. And I would pretend to play guitar and pretend that I was entertaining somebody until my father brought home the Sugar Hill record. That's when it just
gosh,
kind
I
of like
remember that.
started to transform into something that I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. Like at first it didn't make sense to me, but it was a beautiful chaos to me. It was like, oh, these guys are like doing poetry on
I was
a
just
drum.
going to use
That's
the
how
word poetic. It's poetic. That Sugar Hill album is poetic. Yeah.
And then he started bringing home Grandmaster. And then I had a step cousin who happened to live in the Bronx River Projects. Now, if you know your hip hop history, the Bronx River Projects is where Zulu Nation is from.
Right.
So the step cousin, he was the first Zulu member that I ever like hung out with. And when I would go to his house or his apartment, he'd be playing all types of rap that I didn't even get a chance to hear yet. It wasn't even like the popular stuff. So it was really bringing me to this planet. And then as time went on, that's why I say Criminal Minded. When the Criminal Minded album hit, for some reason, a switch went off in my brain.
You
and I was
knew
like,
what you wanted to do.
I'm going to make a record.
Yeah.
And everybody was looking at me like, what?
Yeah, I think a lot of rock and roll artists have this epiphany, this aha moment. Like I know Keith Richards talks about listening to Elvis's Sun sessions, I think, or the Sun record, and going, that's what I want to do. It's really interesting. I used to break night. Do you remember that term, break night?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I break night all the time.
For those listeners who are too young, break night means sneak out of your house in the middle of the night, and while your parents are sleeping. It was my mom in those days, and you'd stay out all night and then sneak back in before they wake up. So I broke night. I think I was 13, maybe 14, and I went to the World, and it was like on a Wednesday night, and Africa Bambaataa was DJing. There was probably 30 people in the club. And I remember him, he played Peace Frog from the Doors, and it didn't register for me. I was like, what is this guy doing? And, I started to understand that there was a real line between rock and roll and hip hop. Like they were just taking it to the next level in a way.
Yes.
And I like when you said it doesn't make sense. I had that exact thing. It was like surreal. Like, am I dreaming here? But like I was leaning against the DJ booth, watching like Africa Bambaataa was like right there. Like I was a foot away from the guy, and he was just spinning some amazing stuff. And
Bam, out of all of them, Bam, for some reason, was just the oddball. I eventually became a member of Zulu, so I used to get my Zulu lessons straight from Bambaataa himself.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
He was just so. Even though he has right now, unfortunately, he has a lot of challenges in his own own personal life. Just bad decisions he's made through the course of his time. But overall, out of everybody that I've been around, he's one of those dudes that just what he did for hip hop.
Yep. He's one of those central figures.
It just organized everything. He brought everything. He was smart. For some reason, he just had the brain to bring everything under an umbrella.
For those of you who don't know, like in the early 1980s and late 1970s, New York City, like there was a big gang culture. And like there was like the Chinglings, there were the there were a couple,
Ballbusters,
the Hell's Angels, even there was Zulu Nation,
Black Spades,
Savage Nomads, all of these gangs, and
Yep.
you know, like I remember being in junior high school and getting into a fight with this African American kid, and his brother was part of Zulu Nation, and
Uh-oh.
like I got the better of this kid. Like and they were all saying that you said right? They were all saying like, oh no, this guy's going to bring his brother down, and there was a real fear for me.
Yep.
Like I wasn't rolling deep with guys, like it was me, and thankfully they didn't show up after school. But I had ditched, I ditched out the last period and went home. But
Right.
like it was a thing back then. Like these people, there was like if you messed with one, you got all, and
Yes,
that was a
sir.
big deal back then. That was part of like the culture, and so like just to give some color around Zulu Nation and
Yes.
what Africa Bambaataa did for hip hop, that wasn't his only job, if you will. Like, he was
No.
doing
No.
he had his hands in a lot of stuff.
Yes.
So you know that you want to be a musician. So let's jump a little bit, right? So you COVID hits and things go kind of south in New York, right? Like you make a decision
Yes.
to go to California and work with Fieldy. Is that the base of the decision? Fieldy goes like, Q, let's come out and let's work together during this period. What's the impetus for you to leave New York and to go and work with Fieldy and Stillwell and Cunique? Take me through
I
that.
think it was you know taking that and looking at everything on a whole, and this will also go. We'll return to this frame of thought when we talk about intention.
Right.
Um, um, in my faith, I just believe that if you let go and let God, he's just gonna lead you through certain paths.
The
And
right
whenever
path,
I
right? The right path.
right the right path, and
Right.
obviously in my lifetime as a human being, sometimes you use your own free will and you make
You get in
messes and
trouble.
mistakes and terrible decisions, and your ego gets in the way and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
think
yeah,
this that.
yeah, sure.
And finally I've gotten to a place now, starting with the COVID, where it was more of, it fell into my lap. It fell into my lap where I was able to take my family from New York to here. It was a smooth transition.
Was
And
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was the
go-
idea that Fieldy goes come out? Like, is it?
no,
How?
it was
What was it?
it was more of, I think, what and Crazy Legs surprisingly has a lot to do with this.
Uh,
It's the artist that I evolved into, and being in a different swimming pool, because to write me off as just a rapper would be a mistake at this
Mistake.
point,
You're not. You're much more
because
than that.
I've been songwriting for other bands. I've
Right.
been doing projects all over the place, and California seemed to open up the opportunities for me that I just didn't get to see in New York
I see.
as
I
much.
see.
Although there are some amazing things that are left there that I still deal with, whether it's, so one of them is a surprise that I'm not sure you're aware of. Myself and Danny DeClay, we put out an EP a couple of years ago, a metal
Oh,
album, a metal
nice.
EP, and it's under the name Rodimus, which is named after my father.
For some of you who don't know, so Crazy Legs is kind of the pinnacle of Rocksteady, right? Rocksteady's
He's
the
the president.
pinnacle,
He's the
right?
president.
So
Yes.
I did jujitsu with Crazy Legs as well. So
Nice.
just so color there, right? So some information, and then Daniel DeClet is a black belt at the dojo
Yes.
whose mom brought him in and sat like for an intro when he was 4 or 5,
Wow.
and he sat on the side of the mat and cried for 6 months, and I talked to him every single time, and I was like, you're gonna be just fine. Like, and finally he did an introductory lesson, and then he became one of the very best black belts who ever
Yes.
came through the school. His karate And even his jujitsu is very good, but his karate is superb. Like he's just outstanding. He was an outstanding student. So did you meet
Yes.
him at the dojo?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that
So
and that's also a funny story because I didn't know he could play
right, he's a good
guitar.
guitarist, right?
And I don't even know how the conversation, it might have been because at the time I was working with this. I have a band called, at the time we were called King's Bounty. We're changing
Right,
the name.
right.
And he caught wind of it, and then he probably kind of like mentioned under his breath, oh yeah, I do that too.
Right.
And I was like, really? And like I was pursuing him,
Nice.
and he was like, no, I'm not interested. And I was like, really?
Don't you know who you're talking to?
I was like, that's weird. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then
Okay, so
one thing led.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead, please.
One thing led to another, and I think my persistence paid off. Where we started working on demos, and we ended up putting out an EP.
So that's one of the things that kind of keeps you tied to New York, right? Like one of these projects that you still have like
yes,
love
one of the
for.
two projects. So
right,
it's that one, Rodimus, and King's Bounty, which is going to be called something different in about a week or so.
So you still got love for New York, even though you're in LA. So
New York is it's first of all, it seems to attract everyone to me as far as like when people hear it, it's almost like dropping a platinum card on a dish to pay for me. But people are like, "Oh, really? Brooklyn?
Yeah,
huh?"
Brooklyn,
Like,
right. So opportunity calls, or you feel as though like there's more opportunity, there's more work, there's more interest in LA. So you take the family there, and so what happens? Is it smooth? Do you hit the ground running, or do you are you kind of start trying to figure out your way in LA?
it's smooth with some things just kind of like getting caught up between my own thoughts and letting go and letting God.
Right.
So initially when I got here, I was working on a Q Unique album with a couple of producers, and we just kept on bumping heads, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. But during that time, Stillwell was in high gear. And what I mean by that is prior to COVID, we had already put out
I remember
Stillwell
that. I remember that.
is already 17 years old.
Right. Is
And
Fieldy
so
in
when
Stillwell?
yes,
And
so it's Fieldy
POD, the drummer from
and
POD?
Love, the drummer from POD,
Right.
and myself, and now the guitar player from a band called Droid and Sunflower Dead. His name is Jamie. He's also like the one of the guitar players now, along with me. And we, when COVID hit, we ended up doing what I think is our best album, which is called Supernatural Miracle, which is crazy in itself because I I messed around with instruments, but I was never on the level as the rest of the guys that I was around. I'm more of I'm a lyric guy. I sit and write lyrics.
Right.
So for some reason, my son, who is a musician, turns to me one day. This is before the Supernatural Miracle album happens. He sees all the guitars in my studio, and he sees I'm doing Stillwell and King's Bounty and Rodimus and all of these things, and he goes, Dad, you're doing all of this rock, you're writing songs, you got stuff out there. He goes, and he paused and he goes, why are you not like writing your own songs with guitar? Like, why are you waiting for other people to play guitar for you? He just gets quiet, and I get quiet, and I'm just looking at him like, oh, it's
talk about an inspired message, huh?
Yeah. And he could play better than most people in the room. So it's like when he said I'm one of those guys that if you give me a challenge discipline wise, I hyper focus on it. I don't know why I do that, but I just tend to hyper focus on it. So from the minute he said that or asked me of that, I just picked up the guitar and I couldn't stop playing. I just kept on playing, kept on playing, kept on playing, kept on playing. And so when it came time to write Supernatural Miracle, there I was, just like he had somewhat predicted. I was sitting with the guitar writing all of those songs. And it just didn't, again, it was one of those, this doesn't make sense moments. Here I am that I never really dove into this instrument. And here I am now writing an entire album by like with this instrument, and just how did these things happen?
Q, let me ask you something right there. So do you feel like, I hear you say, by the way, like I firmly agree with this point, like, let go, let God, right? I'm right there with you, right? And so do you feel like you're in California, you have this, challenge from your son? Are you feel like you're being led? Is that the experience? Like now you find yourself playing guitar. It doesn't make sense. Like, are you being led? Do you have that sense?
Yeah, I do. And especially when I don't get in the way of it. If I start overthinking, because we're human, so we start looking at all the players on the chessboard and start questioning what's this guy's intention, so what's that guy doing.
So take me a little bit through that. So when you say you don't get in the way, what are you doing to stay out of the way?
Keep my mouth shut. That's number one.
Like don't fuck it up, right? Like
like just be quiet, right. No matter what. And the thing is, that's tough for people because no matter what the other players are doing with their lives or how they approach things, you have to be quiet. You can't. What I've learned the hard way, because remember, I come from a group called the Arsonists, and in that group, we all made a mess because we were young and we couldn't help ourselves. We were very vocal towards each other, and we ended up hurting each other countless times because we would always, I'm doing this. What are you doing? You can't hold your own weight. What are you doing? I'm doing all the work.
Sabotage,
and it's like that. It doesn't work. That approach absolutely doesn't work.
So what? So you have keep your mouth shut. What else is keeping you kind of humble or being led? Like
just what's the work in? Just put the work in, regardless of who's doing what. You can't. If and a lot of people do this. It's like, and I hear people who have just 9 to 5s, and they say they come home, I do all the work up there, and it's like, okay, so
okay, what? Yeah.
So it's a big deal, and so I look at it like now, it's like, even though there might be a little mental tug of war from time to time because I am human, but I will most of the time, the majority of the time, I just pick up the guitar quietly, play or write lyrics or just practice or just and I try not to put thought into what guy number 1 is doing or guy number 2 is doing.
Just what you can control, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the other thing. Focus on what I can control because no matter how much we want to, we can never control the team. You can't.
You can't.
There's no way.
Thank you for listening to the Gentle Art Podcast. Please share, rate, and review. And if you have any questions or you'd like to reach out, please contact us at the GentleArtPodcast@gmail.com or contact us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter or thegentleartpodcast.com.